2025 was a weird year, especially for me. I started the year finishing up one of my most ambitious video projects thus far, reviewing all the main series Sonic games. For however good or bad that series may have done, I'm pretty proud of how those reviews turned out, even if I have some regrets about the California trip I took last year. I've done my most writing since 2022, including finishing a fanfiction I've been working on since 2017. And of course, I've made multiple fan songs based on two of my favorite video games of all time, and one of them has proven to be the best performing, most liked song I've ever written. As a creator and performer, this has been my most successful year, maybe ever. Personally though, it hasn't exactly been sunshine and rainbows. The year basically started with the psychiatrist I've been seeing since childhood retiring, with a changeover taking me so long to do that I ran low on meds, and that was far from the last time I've had medication issues this year. I've learned I have sleep apnea and also that CPAP doesn't work as intended for me. My laptop completely died on me, erasing over a decade of writing I had done, including over 1 million words that I had never gotten the chance to upload or save elsewhere. I've had to handle changing health insurance, including a company completely canceling my insurance plan with no warning and less justification. And of course, I've been dealing with the rapid decline of my mother's health, culminating in October with her sudden death, a month before her 60th birthday. And none of this is even mentioning the state of the world at the moment. Corporations feeling more emboldened to take advantage of people by the day, constant and unrelenting attacks on immigrants, the country of Palestine, and anyone without a metric fuckload of money, and not to mention the increased demonization of the trans community. The clinic I've been going to for HRT since 2023 shut down this year, and something tells me it wasn't just because the rent was getting high. Not that it matters that much considering they canceled my estradiol prescription since I have high blood pressure. 2025 hasn't been great overall, and I don't think most of us are going to look back on this year very positively. But again, as a creator, this has been a surprisingly rewarding year, and I am eager to see what 2026 has in store. However, before we can get there, we do have one more thing to take care of. So with minimal further ado, hello ladies, gentlemen, and comments against the binary. I'm Sorio99, and welcome to the Sorio Game Awards for 2025. The last idiosyncratic game awards in the business since the creators I'm blatantly ripping off moved to either straightforward best games list or tournaments. I'm going to be talking about 10 of the best games that are released in 2025, at least according to myself, and the ways that they best excelled. And for those who aren't super familiar with my review content, quick disclaimer, I'm not good at playing games. I got into Balatro almost a year after its release, I only played Hollow Knight this fall, and even though I now own an Xbox Series X, I still pretty much just play smaller PC games or Nintendo titles. I don't have a single Microsoft or Sony published title in my awards. I'm kind of a hack like that. With the preamble out of the way, let's start off our awards as always with the Ghostbusters 2 award, which goes to the most fitting sequel. Now note that I said most fitting sequel, not necessarily the best. Obviously I'm only ever going to award a game I think is actually good, but keep in mind this is nowhere close to the last sequel you'll be seeing in this video. And the winner is... Kirby Air Riders. You think Silksong and Prime 4 took too long to come out? How does waiting 22 years for a sequel to a racing game sound? Kirby Air Riders is one of those games that still doesn't quite feel real to me. Kirby Air Ride is one of the games I grew up on, being a GameCube kid and all, and I remember spending hours upon hours playing it completely wrong. I did that with a lot of my childhood games. I played dolls with Super Smash Bros. Because I didn't have friends to play with. Air Ride's racing has always been different from other kart games, with no conventional acceleration and only 1 or 2 buttons, incredibly varied vehicles that pretty much all play differently, and straight up combat mechanics thanks to the few controls you have and the copy abilities carried over from the main series. I can't think of another mascot racer where an important stat for your vehicle is HP. Air Ride was already a unique and incredible game, and writers took everything it got right and expanded it incredibly. There are a ton of new racers to play as with actual distinctions between them, even more unique and memorable vehicles, a story mode of all things that stands alongside Return to Dreamland and Star Allies in terms of recontextualizing previous plot lines, and actually completely optional online because Masahiro Sakurai respects his players. We even got incredible new songs, because what is the purpose of the video game industry if not to produce memorable soundtracks? I don't think Air Riders is the best game of the year. I love it, but it is still a somewhat niche kart racer which gets most of its appeal from being a Kirby spin-off. It's a ton of fun and I highly recommend it, but if someone told me they didn't like it and preferred more conventional racers like Mario Kart or Sonic Racing, I wouldn't blame them. It's not perfect either. I think the main theme's lyrics are kind of awkward sounding, at least in English. The game's balance heavily favors certain builds over others, and some of the checklist tasks might genuinely be impossible. But even with all those qualifications, I think Kirby Air Riders is a real treasure, and a game I'm definitely going to come back to in the new year. Now, where's the next mainline Kirby game? It's been almost 4 years since Forgotten Land came out, so the next one should be out by March, April at the latest, right? Right? While I cope with my denial, let's move on to the January Judgement Award, which is rewarded to the game which gave me the best first impression. I may not have gotten far in this one, and it's more than possible that it messes the whole thing up later on, but there's still something to be said for a good introduction. And the winner is... Hollow Knight Silksong. It's weird to say I can only give my first impressions on a game when, based on the speedrun achievement, I should be more than halfway to 100% completing it by now. However, not only am I not a speedrunner by any stretch of the imagination, but I also still have yet to complete Act 1 of this game, and something tells me there's going to be at least 2 acts. Plus, from what little I've heard, I still haven't gotten to the most rage-baiting parts of the game, and I'm not looking forward to those. Like I said earlier, this year was the first time I played through Hollow Knight, and I really enjoyed it. I've never been super into the Dark Souls-inspired games, primarily because I prefer my difficulty be more on the fair side of the graph. However, I really enjoyed Hollow Knight. The Metroidvania style of exploration and growth, the interesting abilities you unlock, and the incredibly atmospheric world of Hollownest are all great draws for a type of game I might not have originally gotten into. There are a couple parts that ended up being so difficult I bounced off of completing them, but overall, I thought Hollow Knight was a great game. So it probably goes without saying that one of Silksong's best strengths is that it's a sequel to Hollow Knight. Engaging exploration and combat in a very interesting kingdom, new abilities that make both more fun, and of course, the challenge. This is not an easy game by any means, but from what I've played thus far, it doesn't feel unfair. Even when you have all your equipment and abilities stolen and get thrown in jail, it still feels well balanced. You feel weaker and desperately want your shit back, but it's nowhere close to insurmountable. But this isn't just a copy-paste job. Hornet does actually play very differently from the Knight, from a completely different downwards attack that radically changes the pogo mechanics, to a new healing method with unique upsides and downsides compared to before, and even a brand new side quest system which incentivizes the best parts of the gameplay. The badge system being completely removed in favor of strict tool and equipment limits initially seemed like a downgrade, but very quickly it became one of the most interesting parts of the game's balance. Again, I'm not making any big claims about the game's quality in the long run. I've heard a lot of great, interesting things about Silksong, and I've also heard a lot of people say how they rage quit before or during Act 2. Maybe I'll end up rage quitting too, who knows. All I can say is, what I've seen so far has left me very interested. I'm definitely never doing the permadeath mode on one of those games though. You couldn't pay me to suffer that much. With one thumbs up I may regret given, let's move on to the next with the Butterside Up Award, which goes to the most controversial game of the year, which I really liked. A lot of possible nominees this year, most of them coming from Nintendo because, wow, I'm literally rich and I still think the Switch 2 is too expensive. Seriously, what the hell? And the winner is... Pokemon Legends ZA. Yes, this game's pricing is scummy. Yes, it sucks that for the best and most complete experience with this game, you need to spend $100 on the game specifically, at least $450 on the Switch 2, and then buy a freaking Nintendo Online subscription. I'm not going to defend any of this monetization. But also, I think we lost the fight for Pokemon not having predatory monetization when Red and Blue locked 10 or so mons to each version, and then didn't even let you obtain the 151st outside of special events. Capitalist nightmare aside, Legends ZA had a lot going against it for a lot of people. The presentation quality of the series has been a point of contention since 2019 at the latest, and the writing and gameplay quality have been controversial at least. The game was basically a sequel to X and Y, two games that many now consider the start of the end for the series overall, though how accurate that is also ends up in debate. And of course, there's the game completely abandoning the turn-based RPG style that the series has been using for almost 40 years in favor of an experimental real-time combat system. I'm not surprised that some people despise this game. But I love it. Legends Arceus was the first Pokemon game I really got into since Generation 6, so getting a sequel to both Arceus and Gen 6 at the same time already felt like it was tailor-made for me. I think the writing here is absolutely incredible, the presentation, at least on Switch 2, is fantastic, and the gameplay ended up working shockingly well for me. Hell, the real-time battling is absolutely a highlight. I don't think it should replace the turn-based style of the core series, but if we get more Legends games in the future, I would love to see this gameplay come back in them. I won't act like the game's completely perfect though. The game mostly looks great, but it is pretty bland stylistically, and some of the shortcuts needed to optimize it on Switch were kinda lame. I love pretty much all of the new Megas, and I'm glad Plus moves exist to boost up non-Megas to that level, but I think some of the requirements for getting certain Mega Pokemon is a bit egregious. And while I get the lack of voice acting to a certain extent, given how much content these games have in them as a baseline, it is starting to get kinda laughable. It's not like the player's name comes up in pre-rendered cutscenes very much at all. Also, I don't really have this written in my script, but for some reason, in some areas of the DLC, the pathfinding for Pokemon really fucks up, and I have no idea why, but it is kind of annoying. But even with all those qualifications, I really do love Legends ZA. I've even been playing through the Mega Dimension DLC while working on this video, and I think it's a ton of fun. I even got a Mega Stone for one of my team who couldn't Mega Evolve before. So yeah, I do recommend Pokemon Legends ZA. Just maybe get someone else to buy it for you, especially in this economy. And on the topic of the economy, let's go straight to the First World Privilege Award, which is given to the best VR game of the year. I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I didn't play a lot of VR this year. My blood pressure is like dangerously high recently, and I'm sort of hovering around the 350 pound mark in weight, so, a bit difficult to get the active VR stuff going for a long period of time. Still, I did play one really good VR game this year, and the winner is... Gorn 2. I do not care about the story of Gorn 2. As a matter of fact, I didn't care about the story of Gorn 1. I think one of the biggest issues with this sequel is that there's a much greater focus on the plot and characters, and that is absolutely not what anybody came to these games for. Honestly, I think I prefer the original Gorn overall, and I don't understand why it took 6 years to make the sequel. With that said, it is still Gorn. Now with giant weapons. I like Gorn. Well, with that brief detour done, it's time to go over the Insulation Renovations Award. This one goes to the best update or DLC that released this year, because contrary to what you may think, sometimes DLC is released in order to improve an already great game, and not just as a cash grab by a multi-billion-dollar company. Who knew? And the winner is... The Rise of the Golden Idol Detective Pass. Yeah, I should have given Golden Idol an award last year. Well, this year they released 4 different pieces of DLC, so I can make up for my past mistakes by saying all of these were incredible. First, The Sins of New Wells acts as something of a short sequel to the main game, tying up a few loose ends while also providing the player with a genuinely intriguing little mystery. The sci-fi elements are dialed down a bit compared to the main game, but what they do with them and the idol itself is incredibly clever and makes for a very fun final puzzle. Hell, I like that for once in this series, we're basically playing as a character, and appropriately enough, it's a hard-boiled detective. Definitely a worthy inclusion for the game. Secondly, the Lemurian Phoenix acts as something of a prequel for a couple key characters in the main game, but more importantly, it tells a story about a more modern Lemuria from the perspective of the people in it. There's definitely a not insignificant amount of stereotyping still going on, particularly with the camp in the second scenario, but I love the translation work you have to do in the fourth, and overall, I like getting a break from the more fantastical elements every other campaign is so heavily focused on. Also, the right guy lived. Third, the Age of Restraint finally gives us a glimpse at the ancient society of the Lemurian Empire, the one that made the titular Golden Idol. And wow, is this a weird little piece of science fiction? It's definitely a fun little storyline, and I enjoy the new twist the Veridolas add to your usual deduction work. Admittedly, I do find the retcon of a certain character previously described a bit jarring, but to be fair, it wasn't a major element to begin with, and it ties the DLC into the main campaign pretty smoothly. And last but not least, the Curse of the Last Reaper acts as something of an alternate sequel to Case of the Golden Idol, this time following a few important characters from that story instead of the titular idol, though it takes a little while to figure out who, when, and why. Honestly, it's just even more fun deduction gameplay, now taking place in 2 different eras, and I love the sweet little button it puts on the Golden Idol duology overall. And yeah, overall I think the Detective Pass is just a great package. almost doubling the number of scenarios to play through from the base game, keeping the puzzle solving tricky and engaging, and continuing the amazing storytelling all at once makes this easily the best DLC of the year. Though maybe if a certain game would release its update, it could have gotten a win, but well. Check this game out if you haven't already. It's pretty damn good. Moving from one comfort zone to another, let's talk about the Driving Down the Highway award, which goes to the game I absolutely love, but also suck at. I was in 2 different car accidents this year. One of them totaled my car. Also, this would have been a great award for Silksong if I'd actually gotten to the Citadel before now. Oh well. And the winner is... Blueprints. This almost feels like cheating, honestly, because truth be told, I'm actually surprisingly good at this one. At least as good as you can be at a game so built around random chance. Let me put it this way, the only trophies I don't have are the ones that require restarting the game and beating it under certain conditions, and the 100% completion trophy that's locked behind those. I have 68 hours in this game, and I only played it initially for 2 months. I'd hope I'd be at least decent at it. Blueprints definitely isn't going to be everybody's cup of tea. Like I said, a lot of the gameplay cycle relies on RNG. That's obviously pretty standard for a roguelite, if not the main requirement for one, but combined with the focus on puzzles and putting things in the right place to progress, I can understand why some people might get annoyed by it. There are a lot of times where your run will end entirely because you just happen to have bad luck on the room draw. But like I said, that's kind of the fun of the game. Working around any bad luck, reducing the randomness as much as possible, and going on journey after journey through the house, all in hopes of unlocking the secrets within, including becoming pseudo-European nobility, I guess, if you're just interested in finishing the tutorial. Okay, but jokes aside, yeah, this is a pretty difficult game. There are parts that I'm really good at, like the parlor game and the bullseye math puzzles, but there are also a lot of parts that drive me up the wall, especially with the extra bonus modes you can unlock. I defend the RNG of the game because it does work with the structure in place, but even I'll admit, Dare mode and Curse mode are unbalanced as all hell, which of course is half the fun of those modes, but still. Overall though, I just really needed to praise this game. It's one of the best puzzle games I've played in years. I literally wrote page after page of notes trying to figure everything out, and some of the twists the game takes post Room 46 are absurd. If you haven't played it yet, somehow, you really ought to. I can't guarantee you'll like it, or even that you'll get very far in it, but if this is your type of game, you're going to eat this shit up. And no, there's no AI art in this game, don't be dumb. With that bit of foreshadowing out of the way, let's talk about the Ribbon Breaker Award, which goes to the best game to come out in January this year. Yes, I have an award with January in the name, and an award for the best game from January, and they aren't the same award. I have never claimed I'm not a hack. And the winner is... The Root Trees Are Dead. Loath though I am to praise a game which originally launched with AI artwork in the biggest air quotes imaginable, I'm not exactly pleased by the path the Root Trees took through development, especially given the AI art didn't even work given the game's premise. To be fair, it was originally made in a week for a game jam back in 2023 when AI art was only mostly detestable, and that version was only ever free. It's still not great, and I wish they never used AI in development at all, but at least now we have a version without AI art. If it turns out the Steam version actually has AI-generated assets, still disregard this entry and give the award to, Hello Kitty Island Adventure for leaving Apple Arcade. But yeah, the Root Trees Are Dead. Very clearly inspired by a game like Return of the Obra Dinn, but instead of solving boat murders as an insurance agent, you're a genealogist trying to figure out the inheritance of an ultra-rich family of douchebag candy moguls via late 90s internet searches and magazine archives. Look, I've long since accepted my channel probably isn't going to be winning over anybody neurotypical or normal. Honestly, it's a very engaging little gameplay cycle, trying to figure out the appropriate search terms, how to find new magazines and books, who goes where on this big-ass family tree. It all feels surprisingly in-depth, despite the obviously limited scope. It definitely helps that the game isn't too long or too short. It doesn't overstay its welcome with only 50 main relatives to identify, but the ending tying everything together stops it from feeling insubstantial. The additional campaign added with the Steam release also helps with that. Root Tree Mania, which is even less of a word than Root Tree itself. Figure out who had affairs with who, when, and how many bastards they spawned. It's a fun little add-on, though it's even shorter than the base game and doesn't feel quite as substantial. Overall though, yeah, I would recommend the Root Trees Are Dead, especially to anyone who likes deductive puzzle games. Just maybe next time don't use AI at all, okay? Maybe then the gamers will respect you. With one controversial recommendation out of the way, let's move to another with the Time Breaker Award, which goes to the best games released in November or December. Usually November, because I prefer to have my award list finalized before December. But never let it be said I won't rush things to the last minute, it's all I do. And the winner is... Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Talk about a buzzer beater. Beyond came out only a day before I started writing this script, and like so many of the first-party Nintendo games this year, it was also a decent contender for the Butter Side Up Award because, Lord Almighty, did this game split opinions. Some people thought it was the best game in the series since Prime 1, and others thought it was worse than Other M. Given I'm giving it an award, you can probably tell which side of the argument I fell on. Don't get me wrong, I do understand a lot of the complaints. Some of the writing from the Federation troopers is rough. Mackenzie's pop-ups telling me where to go can be annoying in an exploration-based game, and while I'm fine with Soul Valley, it is definitely a lot closer to the huge empty sandbox a lot of people complain about than like Breath of the Wild. Sure, I enjoyed drifting through the green crystals, but I'm also someone who makes Excel spreadsheets for my fanfiction. I am not the median consumer. But also, this is still Metroid Prime. Admittedly, I've always been more of a 2D Metroid fan than a Prime fan, mostly because I really don't like the Wiimote aiming controls for the Prime trilogy. Though to be fair, I feel like the Metroid series has the same problem that like Star Wars or Alien has. The fans like 2, maybe 3 entries in the series and then consider everything different from those coupled to be complete blasphemy. Oh gee, I wonder why Nintendo only remastered the first Metroid Prime. Oh no, Prime Force Worlds is way too linear. Buddy, Talon 4's overworld barely has branches to the different elevators. Magmore Cavern is all but a straight line. Oh, but the core progression through the game is so strict. Buddy, do you think the sequence breaks were a part of the developer's vision? But why did they include these lowest common denominator NPCs? Maybe because the best-selling Metroid game ever sold less than Square Enix's Avengers. I like Prime 4. The combat feels smooth and fun, the puzzle solving is incredibly solid, and while the main areas are definitely pretty linear, there's still plenty of exploration to be had in the process and a ton of secrets to come back and find once you get later upgrades. Also, I'm just gonna say, I like a couple of the Federation troopers. Mackenzie's worst moments are front-loaded, but overall I think he's kinda charming. Admittedly, I haven't beat Beyond yet, because, oh my god, I've had so much to work on this month. I've heard the ending is a bit controversial, so who knows. But from what I've played, and I have played a lot, I think Metroid Prime 4 is a great return for the Prime sub-series. Now, let's hope the next entry doesn't take another 8 years to make. Coming up on the end of today's awards, let's give out our penultimate trophy, the Quaker's Rice Cakes Award, which goes to the best game that I loved that it feels like nobody else appreciates. Admittedly, my criteria for this entry has always been iffy. Past winners have included Beatopia, Patrick's Parabox, Play the Princess, and Princess Peach Showtime. This category is usually just the other game I want to talk about. And the winner is... Once Upon a Katamari. Maybe it's just because the only advertising I consume these days is in Nintendo Directs and the trailers shown in movie theaters, but I feel like this game slipped under the radar. Seems like unless you watched the Nintendo Partner Showcase in July, there wasn't any big announcement for the game's release. Seems odd given that the reroll remakes were pretty popular from what I remember. Though, admittedly, the first reroll definitely made a bigger splash. But it's especially strange to me because, frankly, Once Upon is just a great Katamari game. An odd thing about the Katamari series is that the games don't tend to do strong theming. Most just stick to the same weird-looking modern day, sometimes with oddly themed levels. The strongest theming any previous game had might be the season and time changing of Me and My Katamari or Touch and Forever reusing past levels. Once Upon a Katamari, meanwhile, manages to make a distinct identity for itself thanks to the time-traveling gimmick of the story. There's definitely a heavy emphasis on the Edo Japan era, so the game doesn't diverge too far from past aesthetics, but there are also several other themes, including the prehistoric age with dinosaurs and cavemen, the Old West with cowboys, a saloon, and a lot of drinks, and even a pirate voyage, which makes it abundantly clear how much the prince cannot swim. There are also just a lot of quality of life improvements, at least from what I've seen. New power-ups that make certain challenges easier, including a radar that shows you where the collectibles are on replays, actual information about how to hit the top ranks and get actual praise from a father figure for once, an easy retry button in case you clear the level without hitting your current goal. Oh, and let's not forget the new optional challenges in each level. Honestly, I feel like Once Upon a Katamari fits this award well because as much as most people who played it liked it, it feels like barely anyone's actually played it. And that's a real shame because I'd honestly say this is one of the best games in the whole series. If you've ever liked the Katamari franchise, give the game a try. Who knows, it'll probably play better than the Apple Arcade game. And now, before we head on to the final and most predictable award of the show, let's go through this year's honorable mentions. These are the titles that definitely deserve to be acknowledged, but weren't quite able to make the list for one reason or another. And they are Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4. Pretty solid package, honestly. Probably would have gotten more than a mention, but my July was kind of busy, so I haven't played much of it at all. RIP Vicarious Visions. Switch 2 editions. I liked Starcross World, and I enjoy a Pokemon game running at a stable frame rate, but they did not need to charge money for some of these. Scarlet and Violet were updated for free. Yalu, a stop-motion point-and-click adventure game themed after and containing the music of Will Wood. If that sounds appealing to you, let me know in the comments if you're pre- or post-diagnosis. Mario Kart World. Honestly, I should probably have given this an award given how many hours I've put into it. What can I say, I like open worlds. I'm a stereotype of myself. But also, $80 fucking dollars? Sonic Racing Crossworld. According to Steam, I have played this game for 74 minutes. I enjoyed those 74 minutes, they had a lot of personality, but there were so many racing games this year. Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. $10. Like, I'm basically rich and still no. The House of Tesla. Look, I love this type of game a lot, and I really enjoyed the House of Da Vinci games, but this didn't do it for me, and I don't think I'm alone given they're basically revamping the whole game from the start. Maybe in an update you could make the ending make sense. Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 for Nintendo Switch. At least these are actually great games, and now Galaxy 2 is on modern systems. Still way too fucking expensive. Hades 2. I bought and played Hades 1 for the first time this year. Haven't actually played much of it, so I'm not going to get to the sequel for a long time. Sorry lesbians, maybe next time. Donkey Kong Bonanza. I really liked this game. A good follow-up to Mario Odyssey made me very interested in the earlier Donkey Kong games, but it just really didn't hit any of the award categories, and once I 100% completed it, I didn't feel any need to keep playing. Which, duh. Claire Obscure Expedition 33. File this under best most acclaimed game that I did not play. I watched the playthrough, looks cool, looks fun, great story. Annoying that they had AI art as a placeholder. Game developers, stop doing this shit. Picross S Capcom Classics Edition. Look, it's tradition at this point, I had to do something. Trace Definitive Edition. Cool Math Games now publishes games on Steam. That's cool. Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. I don't really like the Warriors gameplay, but it's cool that so many people do, and I like them actually making it canon. Still haven't played it though, maybe next year. And finally, the Talos Principle Reawakened. I don't think the Talos Principle really needed a remake, but at least it added a bit of new content. Maybe someday a Talos Principle release will actually get an award fair and square. Who am I kidding? I'll quit doing these before that ever happens. Well, with everything else out of the way, it's time to move on to our final award, the most prestigious honor available on this unmonetizable YouTube channel, the Game of the Year. This goes, of course, to the best game to release in the past 365 days, the one that stayed rent-free in my brain since its release, the game I can barely imagine the world without anymore. 4 previous winners before this have been crowned, those being Sonic X Shadow Generations, Tears of the Kingdom, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and Metroid Dread. A lot of platformers that I award, but never let it be said that I don't have any variety. And the winner of Game of the Year 2025 is... I mean, what else could it have been? Deltarune. 10 years ago, one of the best games ever released. I played it, a 16-year-old basket case with a tenuous grasp on reality and only 1 month until I was locked in a mental hospital for a week. Undertale was amazing. Undertale feels like a once-in-a-lifetime miracle of an experience, the kind of game that people would try to recreate for the next decade and never reach that same level of quality. The gameplay is amazing, the music is legendary, the writing is some of the best writing in any game ever, hell, the best in anything ever. There are full-length novels that don't hit the same level of prose, dialogue, and one-liners as Undertale. Shakespeare himself never wrote a line as incredible as, despite everything, it's still you. Undertale remains, to this day, one of the best games I've ever played. Deltarune is at least 10 times better than Undertale in every way. I spent the back half of 2025 obsessing over Deltarune. I saw a reply to a comment I left on another person's video describing me as a Deltarune fan musician, and they're not even wrong. I wrote over 100,000 words of fanfiction about this game since June, and I'm still not done with it. I've spent at least an hour of every day thinking about this goddamn game. I've assigned specific plot beats of this game's story to almost every song by one of my favorite bands ever, and I still think about it every time I'm driving with those albums on. Hell, the main character's name has become a vocal and mental stim for me. I don't care if only 4 out of 7 chapters are out currently. If I didn't give this game of the year now that it's a release product, I'd be lying to each and every one of you. The core gameplay is tuned to perfection. The visuals are absolutely stunning. The music? The best soundtrack Toby Fox, world-famous composer, has ever made? A thematically strong, catchy as hell, incredibly integral OST that manages to make every moment feel exactly right? Yeah, no shit, the music is great. The bosses are incredible, the standard enemies are memorable as hell, the puzzles are some of the best puzzles in any RPG I've ever seen. If this game had no characters, cutscenes, or dialogue, it would still be in the top 5 games released this year easily. But this game's strongest suit is its writing. Every character in this game feels like a fully fleshed out person with their own life and personality, even when it's a fucking cactus hiding behind a shower curtain or a lizard spitting out smoke. The core cast have already lived rent-free in my head since 2018, and chapters 3 and 4 have only made them deeper and more engaging. I don't think they're your characters I've fallen as deeply in love with than Chris Dreamer, Noelle Holiday, and Susie No Last Name Given. Fuck, I've become obsessed with a character who, at least as themselves, has not appeared on screen thus far. So, yeah, Deltarune is easily my game of the year. I'm sorry if it's the predictable choice, but considering at least half of you came here for Deltarune content, I can't give it to anything else. Well, that was 2025. Hopefully I don't completely fall off the face of the earth in the new year, but for now, this is Sorio Cadell, signing off. Peace.